Hi again, everybody. It's time for another video. This is a follow-on to the video I made called Top-Down Geography, where I showed you a method of memorizing how to draw a globe. And it's top-down because you do the entire globe at the level of detail that you can handle on an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. And if you didn't see that video, I'll give you a little bit of a recap. There are 3 steps to the process. First, you divide the globe into 24 pieces. Then you memorize what's in every piece by number, 1 through 24. And the third is you learn to draw a map of each piece with the contents that you memorized. We're going to use exactly the same method to go one level deeper in the top-down method. Now, from the first video, we divided the globe into 24 pieces like this. And that is 12 rectangles in the middle divided by the equator, and 12 triangles on top and below each of these columns. So this forms a globe by wrapping it up and then having all these triangles converge. The top of every one of these points is the North Pole, and so we bring them all together. And as we went through that first video, I told you that this piece number 1 is the most complex, and it's hardest to draw. It's got the most stuff in it, and so that's what this video is going to do, is to drill down just into piece number 1. So we're going to memorize how to draw piece number 1. Piece number 1, if you remember, contains Europe, the Mediterranean, and North Africa. And it includes a little more than that. It includes quite a bit of the Middle East. So we're going to take this triangle, use the same method. What we're going to do is divide it into 24 pieces. Just subdivide it one level deeper. But it's a triangle, not a sphere, so we won't use this same method we used to reduce the whole globe. This will just reduce this triangle. Now this is not an ordinary triangle, it's a spherical triangle. It has the apex at the North Pole, and then we have this is the 0 degree line of longitude, this line that comes down from the North Pole to the South Pole. And this is the 60 degree east line of longitude. So the triangle we're interested in is bounded by 0 degrees east, 60 degrees east, and 30 degrees north. So this is the 30th parallel. And this is a spherical triangle. And as it turns out, there isn't much above 70 degrees. There's a little bit of Norway that peeks into that. So we're not going to do a triangle. We're going to do, I haven't figured out geometrically what it is. It's going to be a truncated triangle bounded on, we're going to do this area that I'm going to shade. So you could think of it as a spherical rectangle, and you could call it that because it's bounded top and bottom by parallels. It's bounded east and west by lines that are perpendicular to parallels, so that qualifies it as a rectangle. But it looks more like a trapezoid when you draw it here, so maybe we call it a spherical trapezoid. But whatever you call it, we want to flatten it out so that it fits on an 8.5 by 11 page, and flatten it out so that it doesn't distort what we're trying to draw any more than we have to. So here's an 8.5 by 11 page, and I flattened it out by curving those lines. So if we take that 30-degree line of latitude and curve it on the bottom of our page like that, then take that 70-degree line of latitude, curve it on the top like that, then we should be able to connect up the meridians that will be roughly perpendicular to that and divide this 60 degrees into 6 pieces. So these will be 10 degrees a piece. They'll end up like this. So those are the meridians that divide our area into 6 stripes. Then we want to divide horizontally by dividing up this gap between 30 and 70. So between 30 and 70 there's 40 degrees. So we'll do every 10 degrees of latitude and we'll get 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So we'll do that. So now we have a nice grid. It's orthogonal, not quite rectangular because the lines are curved, but these are the 24 pieces that we're going to memorize. So we number these 1 through 24 just like we did before. Alright, so now this is the first step, to divide the region into 24 pieces and number them. And the calculation of latitude and longitude is even easier here because our numbers are better. We have, let me just write in the latitude lines here. This is 30 degrees, 40, 50, 60, 70. And longitude runs from 0 degrees on the left, every 10 going across. So this is 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Okay, the next thing we do is make a list of the contents of each of the pieces. And I've done that, and I've made a little card for myself, laminated card that I carry around that I can rehearse the contents. And get ready to pause the tape. I'll show you the contents of my card that you can copy down and make your own card. So that's the first side. That's the second side. And when I made my file, I just ran it all together, 1 through 24, printed it off in a fairly small font, and then just cut out the paper around the text and folded the paper over right in the middle between number 12 and number 13. And then just, that's what this is, then I just used packing tape to laminate it by putting packing tape over the top. So you can do that if you want to make the same card. Now, memorizing it, this is even harder than the world map because it's got a lot more stuff on it. So I memorized it by row, 1 through 6, and then 7 through 12, and so on. 1 through 6 is easy. That one I can teach you right now, and you'll have it, but it gets harder as you go. But the first row is Norway, number 1. 2 is Norway and Sweden. 3 is Finland, kind of all by itself. 4, 5, and 6 are each Russia. So Norway, then Norway, Sweden, then Finland, then Russia, Russia, Russia. Finland is kind of interesting that it has its own box, it pretty much fills it, and there's not much else in there. And Finland doesn't overlap on any other box very much. It does a little bit, but not much. Then I drew a fairly accurate map of that area. And I colored the water blue just because it gets overwhelming if you don't. And I had a hard time finding a map that fit an 8.5 by 11 page, which was what I wanted. And I found one, I think it's in an old atlas, but it was prior to the demise of the Soviet Union, and so those autonomous republics of the Soviet Union weren't really clearly marked on the map. So most of the big ones, Ukraine and Belarus and so on, and the Baltics, I got. But the ones in the Caucasus, I didn't get in detail. So down here where we have Georgia, Azerbaijan, Armenia, those are left as an exercise to the reader or for future work, or if you want to drill deeper. Similarly, the Balkans have undergone a lot of geographical changes since that map and modern times, and I don't have a modern map of the Balkans at this scale, and so that's left blank. And so the Balkans are just one lump there, and you can break it into the old, Yugoslavia as you choose. As I pointed out in the first video, this is a top-down approach that allows you to go to whatever depth of granularity you want, whatever's comfortable and how much ever you want to take at a time, and then you can keep refining it as you go, which is what we're doing here with our first step of refining this number 1 triangle. Now, I use this to help me memorize my list. And so I try to have something in my mind to picture as I'm memorizing how to recite these. And what worked out really good, and I'm still in the middle of this process, I can't do it all from memory right now, but I made a map just like this, just copied it, and then cut it into the 24 pieces and made flashcards. So here's piece number 21, and I memorized that piece by, first of all, the list of what's in there. There's Greece, Crete, Turkey, Libya, and Egypt. I think that's what I have on here for 21. Yeah, Greece, Crete, Turkey, Libya, Egypt. But I also get an image of how this thing looks. And so the way it looks is you got Crete right in the middle. The Mediterranean is pretty much eating up the whole block. And then you got Greece, the lumpy part of it on the bottom, and a corner of Turkey, Libya, Egypt. So what I do to drill myself is I've randomized these. I just shuffled them, and I wrote the number of each one on the back so that I can take the stack upside down and look at it and say, so this one happens to be number 1. What's in 1? Oh, yeah, that's Norway. That's an easy one to remember. So then I try to imagine, well, how does Norway fit into this particular number 1 rectangle? And it fits into it over on the lower right-hand corner. Not much of it peeks out. But I try to burn that image in my mind. Norway is this corner of this box. So I'm done with that. And if I need to reproduce this box, I can draw the box and say, oh yeah, take the corner, that's Norway. And then if I look at this number 1 and say, oh, I know what that is, that's Norway in the corner, I look at it, yeah, got that right. So then I move on to the next one. Next one's number 12. 12, that's way off to the end. This is Russia, and I don't have it memorized right now, but if I can look in here, it's Russia and Kazakhstan, and the image of it, I think Russia is pretty much all over the top. Kazakhstan appears as a slanty corner coming out of the lower right. Nope. Russia's pretty much all the top, and Kazakhstan is pretty much a level line cutting off the bottom. So you see what I go through in my memorization technique is I make a guess at it and I look and I'm right or wrong, and if I'm wrong I learn from it and then go on to the next one, 11 and so on. So these, hopefully after going through these a few times, I'll have an image in my mind that will allow me to draw a map of Europe. It's a little more than Europe, it's quite a bit more than Europe, and that's my objective. Now there's a few memory aids that have popped up as I go. For example, you may know about memorizing things. People who teach how to memorize teach you that absurdity really does help you remember things. If you connect something that's absurd to what you're trying to memorize, that absurdity is just so absurd that you can't forget it, and then it comes to mind. So when I look at piece number 16, for example, I think, well, what do I remember about 16? Well, Sweet 16. That's when the young girls are pretty, and you find pretty young girls in Ukraine. So that's what piece number 16 is. It's Ukraine, and that's the predominant part of it. But it is the Black Sea because it has Crimea and then the Black Sea, and that pretty much dominates that box. The lower boundary, or the lower shore of the Black Sea is this bump that's Turkey below, and then you have Russia to the right, and that's it, that's the contents. But I also use a technique, a memorization technique for this image on how to draw the Black Sea and Crimea and the Sea of Azov. And that is you draw the Black Sea that looks kind of like a lima bean. It has the concavity down here in Turkey, and then it's concave up here, although it bulges to the left, and then it has this lobe on the bottom. But it's not hard to memorize this shape of the Black Sea as if you cut this shoreline straight across, right, when you hit the end, when you hit Crimea, switch to the shoreline of the upper shoreline of Crimea, and then get back on the shoreline of the Baltic Sea. And draw that first, then you draw a hand in a sleeve. So you've seen pictures of a hand pointing with a finger in a sleeve that you paste on documents to point to where you're supposed to sign it or something like that. Well, if you draw one of those, right over the top of the top shoreline you drew, you get this sleeve, this hand, this finger pointing, and this is the top of the hand and the sleeve. And just draw right over the top, and then that divides things up so that the top of that, the hand part of it, is the Sea of Azov, and the middle part is land, that's Crimea, and the rest of it's the Black Sea. So that's just one example of a memorization technique that I happen to pick out for piece number 16. And I've done the same with others. For example, 15 is dominated by Romania and Bulgaria, so they're kind of in the middle. And they're kind of like Finland, that they're the only ones, I mean, they don't go out into any other boxes, although they do have other things in their box besides them. But this list of countries is a fairly long list in number 15. And I just took the first letter of every country that's in there, and you get a nonsense word, you get P shum arbag. Well, what's P shum arbag? It means nothing, but it kind of has a ring to it. And it stuck in my mind the first time I figured it out, and it helps me remember it. So P shum is, you know, P-S-H-U-M-R-B-A-G, and then later I had to add Turkey, so it's bagged with a T on the end of it. But it stands for Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Ukraine, Moldova. R is Romania. Now you're into the big things, because the P shum takes you around the top. R for Romania, B for Bulgaria, A for Albania, G for Greece. And then after I had put that together, I realized, well, I'm missing Turkey. And this is an important part of Turkey because it's the Dardanelles. It's the Sea of Marmara. It's got the Bosporus, and you know, it's a pretty significant part of the geography of Europe. And that's in number 15, right along with P shum arbag. So you can kind of see other things here. 19 is dominated by Italy and the Adriatic. They kind of take up the thing with a bunch of countries on top. Czechia, a couple of things about that is I learned in the process of putting this together that the Czech Republic changed their name officially to Czechia. And I don't know if that's caught on yet, but I decided I'd be modern and use that. And as it turns out, Czechia happens to be right on the, what is it, 30, 40, 50th parallel. And it's pretty symmetric. It has a, you know, it just gets divided top and bottom, right in the middle. So number 8 has the top half of Czechia, and then 6 boxes later, number 14 has the bottom half of Czechia. Let's see, what else? Well, as I said, I'm still in the process of learning, and as I go, I'm putting together tricks that help me memorize. You can figure out your own tricks if you want to do this, but you're up to speed now on what I'm doing, and if this is useful to you, then I'm really happy about that. It's a lot of fun for me, and I hope you have fun with it too. And as always, thanks for watching.